To some people, kids are the best thing in the world, and to some, they are literal spawns of the devil. Take a look at these kids.
Welcome back to our YouTube channel. Day 3 after murdering somebody.
Whoa! Don't put that on the camera.
It was worth it.
And we had a lot today.
It was worth it. I got plenty of sex with it. I was payment for doing it.
Or this one whose life goal was to become the next school shooter.
My name is Nick, and I'm going to be the next school shooter of 2018. My goal is at least 20 people.
It is justified when these kids get to spend the rest of their lives locked away from the world.
It is a judgment of this court that upon your conviction for the crime of murder in the second degree, that you be sentenced to an indeterminate term of imprisonment.
Starting with Nikolas Cruz.
My name is Nick, and I'm going to be the next school shooter of 2018. My goal is at least 20 people with an AR-15 and a couple tracer rounds. I think I can get done. It's going to be a big event. And when you see me on the news, you'll all know who I am.
On February 14th, 2018, a day that should have been filled with love turned into a nightmare at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. On that fateful day, he arrived at the school in an Uber, carrying a black duffel bag and a backpack. He entered the school building and began his rampage, methodically moving through the hallways and classrooms, firing at students and staff.
We were doing a review for some of our exams that we were going to do, and the fire alarm had gone off. And Mr. Beagle told us to start packing up all of our things and to start heading down the stairwell. We flooded into the stairwell.
And you were going to go down the closest stairwell?
He carried a black duffel bag and a black backpack containing a Smith & Wesson M&P 15 rifle, 5 magazines, and hundreds of rounds of ammunition.
Doors unlocked, the gates open, allowing Cruz to get inside undetected.
Emerge of the accused shooter inside Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School during the attack. ABC's Ariel Reshef is here with the details on that. Ariel, good morning.
Good morning to you guys. Those images from inside the high school showing the moments leading up to that deadly rampage and a series of apparent security failures by police and school officials. A warning: if there are children in the room, the content here may be disturbing.
Possible shots fired at Stoneman Douglas High School.
This morning, chilling images and 911 calls from the Parkland massacre, painting a timeline of terror. 19-year-old Nikolas Cruz seen here loading an AR-15 in the hallway of Stoneman Douglas High School as a frightened freshman walks past. The Sun-Sentinel reporting that according to that freshman, Cruz telling him, "You'd better get out of here, things are gonna start getting messy." Moments later, Cruz killing 17 students and staff.
Oh my God! Oh my God!
The release of surveillance videos and audio, all part of a scathing draft report from a Florida State Commission, shining a light on a host of fateful security missteps.
If we can't protect our children in schools, then who can we protect?
The chaos and terror that ensued were unimaginable. Students and teachers tried to hide, barricade themselves in classrooms, and flee the building. The fire alarm was triggered, adding to the confusion as people initially thought it was a drill. The school's security cameras captured Cruz's movements as he carried out his deadly mission. He proceeded to shoot and kill 14 students and 3 staff members and wound 17 others in one of the deadliest school shootings in U.S. history.
We got shots fired. Hostile shots fired. 1200 building.
Those who escaped the initial onslaught of gunfire ran for cover and reached out to loved ones. Caitlin Carbachi was at work yesterday when her younger sister, Hannah, texted in a panic. "Caitlin, there is a shooter on campus. I am not joking. Call 911, please." Hannah, "What? Are you serious? Run." "Caitlin, I am not joking. They just shot through the walls. Someone in my class is injured. I am not joking. Call mom and dad." The next message was to her parents, in case she did not make it. "I'm so scared, Caitlin. Tell them I love them so much. I know, Hannah, you're gonna be fine." Moments later, she texted about a wounded classmate. "They got shot like 8 minutes ago when the shooting started. How many shots did you hear?" "A lot." It happened in a first-floor classroom. Hannah survived, and so did Samantha Grady, a junior who was grazed by a bullet while hiding in the same classroom. This morning, they received the terrible news about their injured classmate.
Unfortunately, she didn't make it.
He then fled the scene, blending in with the fleeing students. Cruz was apprehended by law enforcement shortly after the shooting. He was found walking along a residential street.
What's going on? What's going on today, bro?
The demons, man.
Demons?
Voices.
He was taken into custody without incident and later confessed to the crime.
And so did Samantha Grady, a junior who was grazed by a bullet while hiding in the same classroom. This morning they received the terrible news about their injured classmate.
Unfortunately, she didn't make it.
By the time he was done, 17 people were dead and 17 others were injured. This horrific event became the deadliest mass shooting at a U.S. high school. Cruz had a troubled past that included a history of behavioral issues and mental health problems. He was adopted at birth, and his adoptive parents struggled to manage his aggressive tendencies and emotional instability. His adoptive father passed away when Cruz was young, and his adoptive mother died just months before the shooting, leaving him and his brother in a state of turmoil. The students who got killed were Alyssa Al-Hadef, Martin Duke Anguiano, Nicholas Duore, Jaime Guttenberg, Luke Hoyer, Cara Loughran, Gina Montalto, Joaquin Oliver, Alina Petty, Meadow Pollock, Helena Ramsey, Alex Schachter, Carmen Schentrup, and Peter Wang. The staff members were geography teacher Scott Beigel, wrestling coach Chris Hickson, and assistant football coach Aaron Feiss. The trial of Nikolas Cruz was a highly anticipated and emotionally charged event. After his arrest, Cruz pleaded guilty to 17 counts of murder and 17 counts of attempted murder. The trial moved to the sentencing phase, where the prosecution sought the death penalty, arguing that the shooting was especially heinous, atrocious, and cruel. They emphasized the premeditated and calculated nature of Cruz's actions. The defense, on the other hand, pushed for a life sentence, highlighting Cruz's mental and intellectual deficits, which they claimed stemmed from prenatal alcohol exposure. They argued that these factors should spare him from the death penalty. In Florida, a jury must unanimously recommend the death penalty for it to be imposed. However, 3 jurors were persuaded to vote for life, sparing Cruz from execution. As the court proceedings continued, Cruz and his defense team could be seen displaying vile, unremorseful acts like flipping the victims off and making jokes.
When these people are upset about specific things that have gone on from that table, like shooting the middle finger up at this court and laughing and joking, Miss McNeil, be quiet. When these people have sat in this courtroom and watched this behavior from that table and they want to say that they're not happy about it, what is the problem?
He also refused to listen to the audio recordings of the shooting, which captured the sounds of his gunfire, the screams and pleas of his victims, and the chaos and horror of the scene. The victim impact testimony was heart-wrenching. Families and survivors confronted Cruz, expressing their anger and heartbreak.
Shot my kid 4 times. His marvelous brain and ideas, dreams, you destroyed them. Shot him 4 times. You needed an AR-15 to do that, because otherwise Joaquin would have eaten the shit out of him.
And I watched you kill my daughter on video. I saw you enjoying it. You shot her with a single shot.
However, none of these statements moved Cruz to feel any remorse for his actions. On October 26, 2022, Broward Circuit Judge Elizabeth Scherer handed down the sentence. Cruz, now 24, was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for each of the 17 counts of murder. Additionally, he received life sentences for 14 counts of attempted murder, with a minimum of 20 years to serve on each, and life without parole for the remaining 3 counts of attempted murder. All these sentences are to run consecutively, ensuring that Cruz will never be released from prison. The courtroom was filled with the families of the victims who had waited for justice for years. Judge Scherer addressed them, saying, "I can tell you that they will not be forgotten, and I feel that I know each and every one of them by the personal stories that you have given." She thanked them for their strength and patience throughout the trial. Throughout the trial, Cruz remained emotionless, wearing a red prison jumpsuit and eyeglasses. He wore a medical mask, but removed it after Jennifer Guttenberg, the mother of 14-year-old Jaime, told him it was disrespectful. "You shouldn't be sitting there with a mask on your face. It's disrespectful to be hiding your expressions under your mask when we, as the families, are sitting here talking to you," she said. While that was well befitting for a heartless school shooter like Nikolas Cruz, the next kid earned the name Hell on the Wheels after she crashed her car and killed her boyfriend, Mackenzie Sharilla.
Her actions were controlled, methodical, deliberate, intentional, and purposeful. This was not reckless driving. This was murder.
Mackenzie Shirilla and Dominic Russo's relationship was anything but ordinary. They had been dating for 3 to 4 years, a period marked by frequent breakups and intense arguments. Mackenzie, who lived with Dominic for most of their relationship, was known for her volatile behavior. Dominic's family and friends often witnessed the toxic dynamics between the couple. Angelo Russo, Dominic's brother, recalled seeing Mackenzie treat Dominic unfairly, which pushed him away as a protective older sibling. The couple's relationship was riddled with threats and violent outbursts. Dominic's mother testified in court about the numerous threats Mackenzie made. Friends close to Dominic revealed that although they didn't foresee the tragic end, they weren't entirely surprised, given Mackenzie's behavior. Christine Russo, Dominic's older sister, mentioned that while she didn't witness the fights firsthand, she heard enough from Dominic's friends to understand the severity of the situation. The toxic relationship reached its peak in July 2022, just weeks before the fatal crash. On July 17th, Mackenzie threatened to crash her car while driving on Interstate 71 with Dominic as a passenger. Upset over a disagreement, she told Dominic, "I will crash this car right now." Dominic, fearing for his life, called his mother and a friend for help. When the friend arrived, he found Mackenzie striking Dominic, who then exited the vehicle and left. Another incident involved a recorded altercation where Mackenzie was heard degrading Dominic, threatening him, and damaging his property. She banged on his house door, demanding to be let inside, and threatened to key his car and break off the door handle. Dominic tried to calm her down, but ultimately called his mother for help. The tragic climax of Mackenzie Shirilla and Dominic Russo's toxic relationship occurred on July 31st, 2022. At around 5:30 a.m., Mackenzie accelerated her Toyota Camry to 100 miles per hour and crashed into the Plidco building in Strongsville, Ohio. The crash was no accident. It was a deliberate act that claimed the lives of Dominic Russo and his friend Davian Flanagan, who was simply an innocent passenger looking for a ride home. The courtroom was filled with tension as security footage of the crash was played. The video showed Mackenzie's car speeding down the street with no signs of slowing down before it slammed into the building. A certified forensic mechanic testified that the car's event data recorder indicated the accelerator pedal was pushed down at full capacity with no application of the brake. This evidence left no doubt that the crash was intentional. It was a decision to end her tumultuous relationship with Dominic in the most drastic way possible. They presented evidence of her violent threats and controlling behavior, including the incidents on Interstate 71 and the recorded altercation at Dominic's home. The prosecution argued that Mackenzie showed no remorse for her actions. The prosecutor presented evidence that contradicted her defense. He showed TikTok videos of her attending concerts, college parties, and Halloween parties a few months after the crash. These were enough to show her lack of remorse for the incident that had happened that day. The trial lasted 4 days, during which Mackenzie was found guilty of 12 counts, including 4 counts of murder, 4 counts of felonious assault, 2 counts of aggravated vehicular homicide, 1 count of drug possession, and 1 count of possessing criminal tools. Cuyahoga County Common Pleas. Judge Nancy Margaret Russo delivered a scathing rebuke of Mackenzie's actions, calling her literal hell on wheels. Judge Russo emphasized that Mackenzie's actions were controlled, methodical, deliberate, intentional, and purposeful. This was not reckless driving. This was murder, she stated. During the sentencing, Mackenzie tearfully read a statement in court, apologizing to the families of the victims.
Families of Dom and Davia, I'm so deeply sorry. I hope one day you can see I would never let this happen or do it on purpose. I wish I could remember what happened. I'm just so sorry. I'm heartbroken. I love Dom and Davia. We were all friends and Dom was my soulmate. I wish I could take all your pain away, and I'm so sorry.
Despite her apologies, the court was not swayed. Before Judge Russo announced her verdict, she said a few things to Mackenzie.
The video clearly shows the purpose and intent of the defendant. She chose a course of death and destruction that day. Exhibit 802 crystallizes the deadly decision-making of the defendant. She morphs from a responsible driver to literal hell on wheels as she makes her way down the street.
While Judge Russo made her statement, Mackenzie broke down in tears.
She made these decisions despite knowing, as any reasonable person would, that her mission of death could have involved others, not even in the car with her. Other people, other cars, pedestrians. She had a mission and she executed it with precision. The mission was death.
Russo said that her toughest decision in the sentencing came down to whether or not to have the two 15-year sentences run consecutively or concurrently.
Should I give you a concurrent sentence that people will believe that somehow I'm being disrespectful to one of the victims? And on the other hand, I have to weigh the punishment. There's a very good likelihood, Mackenzie, that you will spend the rest of your life in prison.
Mackenzie was ultimately sentenced to life in prison, with eligibility for parole after 32 years. Dominic Russo's father expressed his heartbreak, but also his reluctance to see Mackenzie spend her life behind bars. It's horrible for everybody. Yeah, I lost my son. It's harder on our family, but I don't want the rest of her life ruined too. It isn't going to make me feel any better, he said. He called her a kid who did a damn stupid thing. The next defendant will prove to you that evil knows no age and bounds. TJ Lane.
You're lucky I have to read this because I'd be staring at you the whole time. Why? Why did you do it?
The events leading up to the Chardon High School shooting on February 27, 2012 were as ordinary as any other day in the small town of Chardon, Ohio.
We get on the PA system. 911. Chardon High School, we had shots fired, gunshots, multiple gunshots. Multiple gunshots? Yes. 911, what is your emergency? This is Chardon High School calling. We are in lockdown. We need assistance right now.
TJ Lane, a 17-year-old student, seemed like any other teenager. However, beneath the surface, there were signs of a troubled mind. Lane had a history of family issues and behavioral problems, but nothing could have prepared the community for what was about to unfold. On that fateful morning, TJ Lane woke up and prepared for school like any other day. But this day was different. He donned a sweatshirt with the word killer emblazoned across it, a chilling prelude to the horror he was about to unleash. Armed with a .22 caliber handgun, he made his way to Chardon High School, his mind set on a path of destruction. As students gathered in the cafeteria, chatting and laughing, Lane entered the room. Without warning, he pulled out the handgun and began firing. The sound of gunshots echoed through the cafeteria, turning a place of camaraderie into a scene of chaos and terror. Students screamed and scrambled for cover, trying to make sense of the nightmare unfolding before their eyes. In the span of just a few minutes, Lane's rampage left 3 students dead and 3 others wounded. Daniel Parmator, Demetrius Hewlin, and Russell King Jr. lost their lives that day, their futures cruelly snatched away. The wounded students, though they survived, were left with physical and emotional scars that would take years to heal. The immediate aftermath of the shooting was a blur of sirens, emergency responders, and frantic parents rushing to the school, desperate for news of their children. The community of Chardon was plunged into a state of shock and grief, struggling to comprehend the senseless violence that had shattered their sense of safety. In the days that followed, the focus shifted to understanding what had driven Lane to commit such a heinous act. Investigations revealed a troubled background, marked by family instability and behavioral issues. Yet, despite these red flags, no one had anticipated the extent of his capacity for violence. The trial of TJ Lane began amidst a whirlwind of media attention and public outcry. The community of Chardon, still reeling from the tragedy, sought justice for the lives lost and the pain inflicted. Lane's demeanor during the trial was nothing short of chilling. He showed no remorse for his actions, often smirking and making disturbing gestures that only deepened the anguish of the victims' families.
As soon as TJ Lane walked in, he was executing his plan, taking off his button-down shirt to reveal this. A white t-shirt with the word killer scribbled on it, showing it off with a smug smile on his face.
In a shocking display of defiance, Lane wore a t-shirt with the word killer scrawled across it during his sentencing. This act of callousness starkly contrasted the gravity of the situation and left many in the courtroom stunned. The families of the victims, who had hoped for some semblance of closure, were instead met with a remorseless teenager who seemed to revel in the pain he had caused. The court proceedings were a painful ordeal for the families and the community. They had to relive the horrors of that day through testimonies and evidence presented in court. The prosecution painted a picture of a cold-blooded killer, while the defense attempted to highlight Lane's troubled background and mental health issues. Despite these arguments, the overwhelming evidence of Lane's premeditated actions left little room for doubt. While the victims read their impact statements, Lane kept smiling, seemingly indifferent to the repercussions of his actions.
I hate you for the pain you have caused, Nick. You chased him down the hall and fired the last bullet that paralyzed him. You're lucky I have to read this because I'd be staring at you the whole time. Why? Why did you do it? Why? You will never ever be in my thoughts after this. Never. My family will move on, not you.
He gave the middle finger to the courtroom and he said,
Saying pull the trigger, the killer's done, masturbates to memory.
On March 19, 2013, TJ Lane was sentenced to 3 life sentences without the possibility of parole. The severity of the sentence reflected the heinous nature of his crimes and the need for justice for the victims and their families. The drama continued in 2014 when Lane, along with 2 other inmates, briefly escaped prison.
Lane, who was 18 years old at the time, wreaked havoc on Chardon High School.
Causing panic, he was recaptured after a few hours and transferred to a maximum security facility where he remains today. Next, take a seat at the Broward County Circuit Court as the next kid pleads his claim for punching his girlfriend's toddler to death, Dylan Shoemaker.
I didn't mean to kill Austin. Who did it? You think I did this? I didn't mean to hurt him. And you know I loved Austin.
Your Honor, Colleen Curtin Gable on behalf of the people. The next matter before the court is the people of the state of New York against Dylan Shoemaker under indictment number 00499 of 2013.
Dylan Shoemaker's story is one that sends chills down the spine. Imagine being just 16 years old and finding yourself at the center of a crime so severe that it would lead to one of the longest sentences ever given to a minor. Dylan Shoemaker was left in charge of babysitting his girlfriend's 23-month-old son, Austin Smith. According to court records, Dylan claimed that Austin wouldn't stop crying, and in a moment of intense frustration, he lost control. He admitted to hitting the toddler multiple times, causing severe head injuries. The situation escalated rapidly, and when Austin's mother returned home, she found her son unresponsive. Panicked and desperate, she immediately called 911, hoping for a miracle. Austin was rushed to the hospital, but despite the best efforts of the medical team, the young boy was pronounced dead shortly after arrival. The autopsy report was grim, revealing that Austin had suffered blunt force trauma to the head. The injuries were consistent with being struck multiple times, painting a horrifying picture of what had transpired. The community of Springville was in shock. How could something so tragic happen in their peaceful town? The case quickly gained media attention, and Dylan Shoemaker was arrested and charged with second-degree murder. The gravity of the crime and the age of the perpetrator made this case particularly sensational and heartbreaking. As the investigation unfolded, more details about Dylan's background came to light. Prosecutors argued that Dylan's actions were not just a momentary lapse in judgment, but part of a pattern of violent behavior. They presented evidence that Dylan had a history of trouble with the law and had exhibited aggressive tendencies in the past. The defense, however, had a different narrative.
When this crime was committed, he was 2 months into his 16th year. There has been a great deal of scientific work as to the lack of development in terms of comparison of a teenage brain to an adult brain.
They portrayed Dylan as a troubled teenager who made a terrible mistake in a moment of overwhelming frustration.
Our laws are geared for adult brains, how they think, not for the impulsivity of a teenager who had significant problems growing up, behavioral problems, aggression problems, anger problems.
They argued that he never intended to kill Austin and that he was ill-equipped to handle the situation he found himself in. Dylan's emotional state and lack of experience in dealing with young children was central to their defense. When he was finally allowed to speak, he said,
"As you can see in my school records, I was trying to change my life around. In 2013, I was doing so much better. This completely turned my life. I can't take back what was done. I wish I could. I would give my life for Austin. I loved him a lot."
He also tearfully apologized to his ex-girlfriend, Ashley.
"Ashley, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt your son. And you know I didn't mean to hurt you. You just can't accept that because you know me. You've known me for 5 years. I never would have wanted to hurt Austin."
Despite Dylan's emotional testimony, the judge's decision was not swayed.
The last hours of Austin's life must have been terrifying for that little boy. By your own testimony, you placed a pillow over his head while he was lying on the bed. Due to the pillow, he couldn't see. Probably he had a hard time breathing, and then you repeatedly punched him so hard as to cause his death.
After deliberating, they found him guilty of second-degree murder.
It is a judgment of this court that upon your conviction for the crime of murder in the second degree, that you be sentenced to an indeterminate term of imprisonment which will have a maximum of life, The court hereby imposes a minimum sentence of 25 years.
The courtroom was filled with a mix of relief and sorrow as the verdict was read. For some, justice had been served for the innocent life that was lost. For others, it was a harsh reminder of the consequences of a momentary lapse in control. On October 29, 2013, Dylan Shoemaker was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. And just before you think Dylan was truly remorseful, here's what he told the reporters outside the court.
Mind your own business.
While his reaction was very dreadful to watch, the next young couple recorded one of the world's most shocking vlogs after they murdered the only obstacle to their love, Aaron Guerrero and Sierra Halseth. In April 2021, the city of Las Vegas was shaken by a crime so brutal and shocking that it left the community in disbelief. The perpetrators, two teenagers, Aaron Guerrero and Sierra Halseth, who would go on to receive some of the longest sentences for their age after committing an unspeakable act. Sierra Halseth, the daughter of the victim, Daniel. Halseth was just 16 years old at the time. Her boyfriend, Aaron Guerrero, was 18. The relationship between Sierra and Aaron was a point of contention in the Halseth household. Daniel, concerned about the influence Aaron had on his daughter, had recently forbidden Sierra from seeing him. This decision would set off a chain of events that would lead to a gruesome and tragic outcome. On April 9, 2021, authorities discovered the lifeless body of Daniel Halseth in the garage of his home near Durango and Alta Drives. The scene was nothing short of a horror movie. Daniel had been stabbed over 70 times, a clear indication of the rage and brutality behind the attack, but the horror didn't end there. His body was then stuffed into a sleeping bag, and the teens attempted to dismember him using a chainsaw and a circular saw. After this gruesome act, they set his body on fire in an attempt to cover up their crime. The motive behind this heinous act appeared to be rooted in Daniel's decision to forbid his daughter from dating Aaron. During the court proceedings, Sierra read a letter detailing instances of sexual abuse and harassment from her father, calling him a drug addict and a pedophile. After committing the murder, Aaron and Sierra fled the scene in a desperate attempt to escape justice. They were eventually apprehended in Utah on April 9, just days after the crime. One of the most disturbing aspects of this case was a video that surfaced online, recorded just days after the murder. In the video, Aaron and Sierra can be seen joking about the crime. Aaron said,
"Welcome back to our YouTube channel. After murdering Day 3 after murdering somebody."
Wow! Don't put that on the camera.
It was worth it.
And we had a lot today.
It was worth it. I got plans. Like, so I was payment for doing it.
And no bleeding this time.
The investigation into the murder revealed the extent of the planning and premeditation involved. The teens had not only committed a brutal murder, but had also attempted to cover their tracks in the most gruesome way possible. The use of a chainsaw and a circular saw to dismember the body, followed by setting it on fire, indicated a level of brutality that was almost unimaginable.
A grand jury indicted Sierra Halseth and her 18-year-old boyfriend Aaron Guerrero.
The trial of Aaron Guerrero and Sierra Halseth was a highly anticipated event, drawing significant media attention and public interest. The courtroom was packed with reporters, family members, and curious onlookers, all eager to see how justice would be served for the brutal murder of Daniel Halseth. During the court proceedings, both Aaron and Sierra faced a slew of charges, including open murder and credit card fraud. The evidence against them was overwhelming. The prosecution presented a detailed account of the crime, complete with forensic evidence, witness testimonies, and the chilling video of the teens joking about the murder just days after committing it. Sierra took the stand and read a letter before the judge, detailing several instances of sexual abuse and harassment from her father. She described him as a drug addict and a pedophile, painting a picture of a troubled household. These allegations added a layer of complexity to the case, raising questions about the dynamics within the Halseth family. However, the court had to focus on the facts of the murder itself rather than the alleged abuse. Aaron Guerrero also made a statement expressing remorse for his actions. He apologized to Daniel Halseth's family, saying he didn't deserve to pass in such a horrible way. In a bid to avoid the death penalty, Aaron Guerrero accepted a plea deal. Both he and Sierra were sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 22 years.
On count 2, you're going to be sentenced to life in the Nevada Department of Corrections with the possibility of parole after 20 years has been served, plus the consecutive 24 to 60 months in the Nevada Department of Corrections for the deadly weapon enhancement. Count 2 is ordered to run concurrent to count 1. On count 3, you're going to be sentenced to 72 to 180 months in the Nevada Department of Corrections. That's ordered to run concurrent to count 2. On count 4, you're going to be sentenced to 19 to 48 months in the Nevada Department of Corrections. That's ordered to run concurrent to count 3.
This sentencing was part of a plea deal to avoid the death penalty, which could have been a likely outcome given the severity of their crime. Click on one of the cards on the screen to see more videos like this.